I am here with Craig Weiss, who's the founder and CEO of Aladdin Dreamer, which is a technology company that's designing wearable items. We'll have to describe what they are that allow people to control their dreams. He originally practiced patent law, and prior to being part of Aladdin Dreamer, he oversaw NJOY, which is the world's largest independent electronic cigarette and vaping company. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's quite an interesting background. I've got some notes here and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how do you go from patent law to vaping to dreaming? You got to give me that.
Yeah, there was definitely not a straight and narrow path for sure. I kind of refer to myself sometimes as an accidental entrepreneur. So I would say, being a patent attorney, so first of all, I was, a patent attorney in large part by accident, also in the sense that, I was a philosophy major in college, and to be a patent attorney, you have to have a bachelor's of science degree. And so I had not a single credit towards that when I graduated. So after college, after law school, I actually had to go back to school to qualify. And so I took biology and chemistry to qualify to be a patent attorney. And those classes actually gave me a nice kind of just, foundation in science. And part of why I became a patent attorney was really my father had been a patent attorney for 50 years. He was the youngest ever managing patent attorney at IBM. So I was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, of all places. And then when I was 6 months old, my family moved to Phoenix. My father took a job as a general patent attorney for Motorola. And then about 40 years ago, he founded his own IP law firm. And the four oldest sons all became IP attorneys and all ended up working for the family firm. So yeah, and my mom was a federal judge for 25 years. So the law was, kind of in the blood. And
basically no intellectual capabilities in your family at all, right?
Well, all right. Now that you said that, I'll just say for the record. So it's a crazy family. So my mother gave birth to children in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So there's 7 of us.
Wow.
And the first 2 were my 2 sisters. My sister Gail has a PhD in philosophy from Yale, and she's a professor at George Washington University, and probably one of the leading, feminist philosophers in the country.
Okay.
My sister Felicia has a PhD in clinical psychology, and then the 4 oldest boys all are IP attorneys, and then my little brother he's a really interesting guy. He's living now in Israel, but had been for a while a day trader, and now is kind of a little bit doing his own thing. Spent 2 years backpacking through South America. So he's actually considers himself far happier than his older 6 siblings.
Well, you really have quite the mind. I mean, it was interesting because we met recently at an education event, and Jeff Hazlett was telling me about you. And Jeff was saying, you got to meet this guy. And all of us lit up when we heard what you do. I mean, we all came and mobbed you, remember?
Yeah, I do remember. It's fun. I love talking about it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, when you have your own law firm and as a patent attorney, you're meeting entrepreneurs every day and inventors and people who are starting their own businesses. And so, we kind of thought of ourselves in a bit entrepreneurial of a way. And so one of my brothers, Mark, who's also a patent attorney, he went to China in 2005 for a client of our firm's, and he was at a trade show and he saw kind of a crude version of an electronic cigar and thought, that would make a really great product, especially if somehow they could ever get it down to the size of a cigarette. And so he founded NJOY as a venture of our law firms in late 2006. But, like me, he's, a patent attorney, he's not a business operator. So he brought in some friends of his to run the company. Mm-hmm. And in those early years, I really was fairly passive, not involved really in a meaningful way with the company. But I had a wonderful mentor, this guy who had taken 3 companies from founding to IPO in his 20s. And he was a venture capitalist. And so he started to encourage me to get more involved with NJOY. Like, hey, this electronic nicotine delivery thing seems to be, trending in a positive way. Your family started this, company. You should probably get a little bit more involved. And so this was all kind of happening right when in 2008 when my father passed away, which was really, a blow to our family, and he was the rainmaker of the law firm. And so that was the first real impetus for me to get, for this shift that happened where I went from being an attorney to an entrepreneur. So when my father passed away, I one of the emotions that I experienced among many was a tremendous sense of fear. He was obviously the rainmaker of the firm, and so for me it was like, what am I going to do now? And so with that, I always say fear is a great motivator. So
certainly is.
I started reading books on business and, joining entrepreneurial groups and trying to figure out how to grow our law firm. And then my mentor, Ellie, suggested that I start getting more involved in NJOY. And so this interesting sort of perfect storm of events transpired. The FDA directed U.S. Customs to seize shipments of NJOY's products at the border as unapproved drug delivery devices. My brother had kind of a falling out with the people he had brought in to run the company. So everything was sort of collapsing. And so I developed a strategy with another brother to help the company defeat the FDA in this litigation. And with the support of my family, I kind of formed a coalition of people to side with us. And we had a board meeting in which we changed the leadership of the company in terms of the board of directors. I became the president. The controller told me on the first day that the company would be out of cash in 2 weeks. And
great.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what ended up happening was I came in, I stopped practicing law. I ultimately became the CEO with the mentorship that I had and some other good fortune. Ended up scaling and scaling and scaling, and I ended up raising like $200 million and hit sort of increasingly higher valuations. The last round was at $1 billion pre-money valuation, so it was like 10 million to $1 billion in about 3.5 years.
Wow.
We scaled up to 130 employees, manufactured about 80 million units of products that we distributed all over the world, and really built kind of an international brand. So it was an amazing kind of rocket ship ride. The last investors, came in at a difficult time in the sense that the category had really peaked right when they came in.
Mm-hmm.
And we were this disruptive technology to the cigarette, which was,
right.
the analog, tobacco rolled in paper for 100 years. And so, but we ended up getting disrupted ourselves by newer technology, which was, the vaping devices, these large devices. And so it really took a big impact sort of on NJOY and on the category as this shift was occurring. And so the new investors, I think, wanted a new CEO to manage this transition. And so I went from CEO to chairman and did that for a year and then cycled off. And so yeah, it was a bittersweet ending for me, having built it up and then, kind of a little bit getting pushed out, but another, kind of great learning experience. And so in 2014, as that transition was underway, I like getting my news from Google because it's Google News is an aggregator and you get all sorts of interesting stuff.
Right.
So I saw this. I came across this article, and the article. Well, I'll take a step back. Right around the time of this article, I had a dream, and so about 50% of the public have had a dream at some point in their life where they realized at some point during the dream that they were dreaming. Mm-hmm. So, presumably about 50% of the people who are watching this will be able to nod their heads and say, oh yeah, that's happened to me. And the other 50% will say, what's this guy talking about? Uh-huh. But when you've had the experience, and maybe Diane, I should ask you, have you ever had a dream where you knew you were dreaming?
Yeah, I have all kinds of crazy dreams. Our family, we walk and talk and scream and do all kinds of things. And so we're probably prime candidates for anything you're selling. Let's just put it that way.
All right, good. Well, so when you have a dream and you realize that you're dreaming,
Mhm.
there's some very interesting things that happen
Mhm.
because for me, and I've probably only had maybe 3 or 4 dozen lucid dreams in my life, as they're called, lucid dreams. But once you become aware that it's a dream, for me at least, I get this kind of ear to ear grin because the first emotion that I experience is an emotion I never get when I'm awake. And that emotion is like, oh my gosh, nothing that's about to happen has any consequence whatsoever.
Yeah.
But when you're awake, everything has a consequence,
Mhm.
right? And even
Mhm.
if you're by yourself and you eat a donut, you're gaining weight. Like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But that's not true when you're in a dream because it's not real.
Mhm.
So you can put your fist through glass or fly like Superman or tell people what you really think, and it just doesn't matter because there's no consequences.
Uh-huh.
So, and then of course you can have these adventures and experiences. I always fly in my dreams when I become aware. So I push off the ground and I literally just Superman, and fly. And it's awesome. And again, I don't get to do that when I'm awake because we
I
can't
haven't
fly.
had that one, but that's interesting.
Yeah. And this is, to me, it's not, virtual reality or augmented reality. Like when I fly, I feel the wind in my hair and the sun on my skin. I mean, these are totally real experiences.
Right.
And so, in fact, if someone were to ask me, oh, Craig, list like the top 10, experiences in your whole life, probably like 2 of those 10 would be experiences I had in a lucid dream.
Huh.
Um,
Wow.
so they're very powerful. And
Uh-huh.
so in 2014, I had this very powerful lucid dream. So I'm in this dream. I'm with my dad, who had died, in '08. And he'd been in other dreams since he passed away, but this was the first one where I became aware that it was a dream. And so he's as soon as I become aware, I have this like, oh my God, like this is your chance. He's right in front of you. And so I give my dad this big hug. And I woke up with this like incredible feeling of, like, I don't know, satisfaction or serenity or comfort. But it was the best way for me to, I guess, articulate it is it was an emotion that I never thought I would ever experience, which was I got to see my dad again emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was super powerful. And for like days, I remember like literally for like 2 days, just almost being like on a cloud. Like I felt so content and happy about it. And so then I stumble across in Google News this article. And what it was these 6 neuroscientists had studied 2 groups of people in a sleep lab, a group of lucid dreamers and a group of non-lucid dreamers.
Is this the Voss study?
Yes. So
Okay.
Ursula Voss, she's a German neuroscientist.
Okay.
And 5 of the 6 neuroscientists are German, and one's actually a Harvard emeritus doctor.
Okay.
And so what she did was really clever. So she studied these 2 groups of people in a sleep lab. And then the article was published in Nature. I mean, Nature is sort of the preeminent peer-reviewed scientific journal. So I knew this was legitimate. And they saw that lucid dreamers in REM, in the sleep lab, had brain activity in their prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain right behind the forehead. And the non-lucid dreamers did not. And so she thought, okay, well, that's kind of interesting because the prefrontal cortex is where you get, executive functions like logic and reasoning. And so this kind of, at least when you think about it, explains this phenomenon that most of us experience, which is you're in a dream, it's a non-lucid dream, a regular dream, weird, crazy stuff is happening, and you just sort of go with it because you don't have any logic or reasoning to challenge, why am I in this weird situation?
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas the lucid dreamers, it would make sense that they have access to logic and reasoning. So their experience is different in the sense that they might be, wait, what am I doing in my childhood home? Oh, it's because it's a dream. That's why I'm in this situation.
I see.
Well, if it's a dream, I don't need to stay here. I can super out of here.
Fly.
Exactly. So then, but what the next part of the study was perhaps I thought the most clever, which was, okay, but did the dreams cause the brain activity, or did the brain activity cause the dreams? So the way she went to figure out the answer to that question was she took the non-lucid dreaming cohort in that study, monitored them until they got into REM in the sleep lab, and then experimented with a wide range of electrical stimulation sort of on the forehead and on different areas of the head. And in one set of, protocol or parameters of stimulation, she got about 77% of the subject participants to self-report a lucid dream. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, 77%. What a huge number from a clinical trial. But what was so fascinating to me was, because these were neuroscientists and not entrepreneurs, their conclusion was, well, this could be used as an effective treatment for people with PTSD or chronic nightmares. And I read that and I thought, well, for sure, of course, that's absolutely true. But having had the positive experiences like the one I had with my father and others, I thought, yeah, but who wouldn't benefit or who wouldn't want to have this experience, every night? And I started to think about it in two different kind of contexts. One was, how much would you pay for an extra year of life?
Right.
The average person sleeps for 20 years. You spend 5 of those years dreaming. For most people, it's just lost, wasted time. So if you could be aware and be in control, you almost get that time back. And do with it what you want. It's almost like if I said to any person, what would you do if I gave you 2 hours a day to do whatever you wanted without any consequence? How would you spend that time? What would you do? And that's sort of the value proposition. And, and it's not just entertainment and fantasy and adventure, though those are good things to a large extent, but you have the opportunity to have the experience like I had with my father. But also there was a study published in 2015 in the Journal of Sports Sciences in which they studied lucid dreamers who used that time to practice. And if you practice any waking activity, shooting free throws, playing guitar, public speaking, they found that it improved your waking performance on par with physically practicing. So I thought, wow, that's another incredible application of the technology. Right. And then the other kind of analog I thought about for this was, I sort of like, it reminded me a little bit of the DVR. I was like, okay, before TiVo, none of us were walking around saying, gosh, I wish I could, digitally time shift my media content.
Right.
But once we had it, we could never go back to the VCR.
Right.
And so I started to think, it doesn't bother me that not many people are walking around saying, gosh, I wish I could control my dreams. But once I give this to people, no one's going to go back to, being chased by the tiger, or being unprepared for their high school algebra test, when they could otherwise be, omnipotent for 2 hours a day. So I said, okay, well, how, at NJOY, I learned how to scale and recruit and build teams, and, we manufactured, and it was a consumer tech product in a whole new category that didn't previously exist. So, I know how to do a lot of that stuff. So, I said, all right, I got to take this study in a publication and turn that into a consumer product. So, I recruited a bunch of really smart neuroscientists, and I've got a couple of people from the faculty of Harvard Medical School in the neurology department, a board-certified neurosurgeon, professor at the University of Michigan who's a PhD in sleep science, and just a whole bunch of really smart people. And then, I said, okay, I've got to replicate the findings from the Nature study. So I got IRB clinical trial approval, and we did a clinical trial at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Michigan, and replicated the findings from the Nature study, and then set about building prototypes. So we did a first generation set of wired prototypes, which functioned and worked, and I wore them. But the problem was, you have all these cables, you feel like the Borg from Star Trek, And it was starting to interfere with my sleep. I was afraid if I turned over my bed, all this hardware would come off my nightstand. So then over the last 6 months, we've been working on our wireless version.
Oh.
Literally, funny that we should be talking today. On Wednesday, I got my first wireless unit. So we're starting off with about 3 or 4 units, hopefully building a few dozen to get into the hands of sort of beta users so that we can test it more. And then one other thing that's become really interesting. So in May of 2017, Apple acquired a sleep tracking company, and it's a company called Bedit, and they have these sensors you put under your sheets to extrapolate your quality of sleep based on movement. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because that's not a super accurate way to measure sleep quality, because the only really accurate way to do that is with EEG monitoring on your forehead. And I mean, the scientific definition of sleep is based on your EEG. And it's the only way to do what's called sleep stage scoring, where you could say, oh, a person was in deep sleep for this amount of time, light sleep for this amount of time. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Now that the world's most valuable company, Apple, is acquiring a sleep tracking company, this to me is a lot more relevant than it was before. And I have to be able to monitor sleep stages, because I need to know when you're in REM to know when to stimulate. And so I thought, well, why don't I kind of bifurcate my technology into two products? One just being the world's most accurate sleep tracker, doing quality, not just quantity, sleep tracking of how well you're sleeping, and we could do some really cool things with EEG monitoring. We can, if you're watching TV in bed and you fall asleep, we could tie into your home automation and pause the show, turn off the television, turn off the lights, put on the alarm, do all of these really interesting things, and which no one else can do unless you were doing EEG monitoring, because we would know, as opposed to a wrist-worn product, you might just be motionless and awake watching TV. So I thought, okay, this is really, a sort of an interesting approach. And so we're focused on that now, which is these two concepts, because I need to do the sleep stage scoring anyhow for the second generation product, where we'll layer in the electrical stimulation. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I was watching a lot of your past interviews and reading up on you, because you should see the list of, I've got a list of things I want to talk to you about eventually. And I know we can't get to it today, but here's what I know about you, that you did a Kickstarter campaign, right? You raised some funding there.
I tried to raise some funding there. I would say it was another learning for me. It was not a successful Kickstarter campaign.
Well, that's how it works with that, right? All or nothing.
Yeah, Kickstarter's all or nothing. Yeah. Unlike Indiegogo and others, I would say it's funny. So much of what I feel like I've learned in my business life is, I would say I probably learned as much or more from my failures as from my successes.
Right.
And so I certainly know how not to run a crowdfunding campaign, which was the way I ran mine initially. And I've learned a lot more about it since then. But yeah, that was one path that I considered for fundraising.
Well, I was listening to a couple of the interviews, and you're real brave. I mean, you go on like Jim Cramer with your vape. You go on these podcasts that slam you before you get in, and you take these guys on. I'm not going to do any of that to you today. You're pretty safe with me, but.
Well, it's funny you say that. So yeah, I've had some interesting experiences at either the highlight, which is really the low light. The single worst. Really might be the worst experience in my whole life was I was invited to testify in front of the United States Senate. And so and I knew going in from my prep work that it was going to be a bloodbath. I wasn't surprised. But it's one thing to be
the night before.
Not well. It's one thing though to be told that it's going to be ugly and then to experience it.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of really a horrible thing. Here it was, we're this alternative to cigarettes at NJOY. And I'm like, this isn't very complicated. The tobacco companies are like the evil empire. They're the only companies in the world that sell a product that when used as directed, kill half of their customers.
Right.
We're an alternative to that. We want to put them out of business. And nicotine is not toxic. It's an FDA-approved drug. It's in the patch and the gum. It's the delivery system of combustion. That's what kills people. And we've got this non-toxic delivery system in terms of, without all of the carcinogens that are created from burning something. Mm-hmm. And yet, when I went into the U.S. Senate, I was told going in, and it was true, that they were going to treat me as if I were a tobacco company. I was, just as bad as them. And so, of course, and I had recruited, the 17th Surgeon General to serve on my board of directors and other people to demonstrate that we were taking a very serious approach to public health. Mm-hmm. I met with FDA 4 times and Health Canada twice and the MHRA in the UK twice. And so nevertheless, it was as predicted. It was a bloodbath. And so literally I had 6 U.S. senators just, eviscerate me for 2.5 hours on C-SPAN. Literally, one of the comments I'll never forget, Senator Rockefeller from West Virginia, he points his finger at me and he says, "You are what's wrong with this country. I don't know how you sleep at night. I don't know how you wake up in the morning. What you're doing, it's as bad as pornography. No, it's worse."
Oh, wow.
So it was 2.5 hours of that. So it was pretty horrible. So I walked out and I said to someone, I said, well, at least for the rest of my life now, when anyone insults me, I can use the response, "I've heard worse from better."
Well, it's hard to picture you in vaping and different things. When I met you, you're this real kind of, I don't know if wholesome's the word, but you have this good boy kind of thing. And the cigarette vaping thing, it just doesn't kind of go along with your personality of what I would have expected you to go into. But you go into these kind of controversial businesses. And even in this, even though this to me is like so interesting, because I mean, I don't dream I'm flying, but I've dreamt my dad was alive, and I've dreamt things similar to what you're talking about. And I know what you're feeling. I would wake up after dreaming I was pregnant, and I hadn't been pregnant in years. It's that feeling of, oh, that was so cool, and you want to get back to it. But then I start thinking about old Star Trek episodes where they're looking through the thing, they're getting addicted to looking through the thing. I'm thinking, are they going to put this thing on their head and then never want to get up because they could just be in a dream? Is it like Bruce Willis's surrogate, or you know what I mean? I start going into. We talked about that night a little bit. I said, are you a Dennis Quaid fan from, what was it, Dreamscape?
Dreamscape.
Yeah. So is there a chance of abuse or you're going to, these brain, your brain waves get fried, or is there anything bad? What's the bad, and who's your competition, and
Sure.
doing bad things?
So in terms of the bad, these are questions that I get a lot. On the safety, the FDA actually.
I'll point at you and do that.
Yeah, you could. It's okay. So on the safety front, the FDA had actually commissioned a safety panel for looking at neurostimulation, and so they established standards for neurostimulation. We're well under those guidelines in terms of the amount of electrical stimulation. So I'm neurostimulation's been around for 30 years and probably more. And my neurosurgeon's like, look, Craig, I mean, you're only doing it at night while people are asleep. I'm implanting electrodes into people's brains who have, Parkinson's and other motor diseases, where it's electrical stimulation 24/7, in the brain. And,
right.
So from a safety perspective, I feel really good about that. And then in terms of the other issue you raised, I would say a couple things. Mm-hmm. So one is, you can only sort of sleep/dream so much. I mean, if I said to you, I'll pay you $100,000 to sleep for the next 20 hours, you couldn't do it. I mean, physiologically, there's only so much your body will let you sleep.
Even with drugs?
Yeah, because a lot of the drugs actually inhibit your dreams,
mm-hmm.
Or your ability to have proper REM sleep.
Right.
And so I think it would be difficult and challenging for people to, sort of force themselves to do that. Or at least just to a huge excess.
Mm-hmm.
The question some people have asked me is, well, aren't you afraid that, people will feel sort of disappointed or depressed about their waking life because their dream life is so much better?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's so many ways for me to answer that question. I mean, I could say, yeah, you're right. And we should also ban vacations because those are so much better than your regular non-vacation life. Or we should ban eating out to dinner because that's way better than, cooking pasta at home. I mean, there's lots of life experiences that are better and worse, and people avail themselves of them.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually say it's maybe the opposite, which is, the vast majority of human beings on this planet will never know wealth. And it's part of why they're obsessed, with the Kardashians and the celebrities, because it's their ability to experience vicariously a lifestyle that they will never have. Mm-hmm. But now they could have it every night. They could fly private. They could, live the life of a rock star or superstar, live out their fantasies every single night. And I think that's very powerful for people to be able to have those life experiences they wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve.
Well, not everybody can do this, so you have to be a lucid dreamer, right?
Well, no, that's just it. The point of what I'm trying to do is to allow people to do this. So the problem with lucid dreaming is some people have the ability sort of naturally or organically, but the vast majority of people, the only way for them to have a lucid dream is it's either random or a random or lucky night, or they train themselves. Now, the problem with training yourself, because lucid dreaming's been around for thousands of years, the problem with training yourself is you can meditate and set your intention and concentrate and do all of these things. But my analogy for that is it's sort of like me telling somebody, how would you like to have the body of a swimsuit model? You just have to do 2 things. It's only 3 words: eat healthy and exercise. It's like, yeah, but those are hard disciplines to maintain. And it's the same thing with lucid dreaming. It's a very hard to train yourself to do it consistently. And it's hard work. And, we're lazy, right? As human beings.
Well, so you just have to put this headband on at night.
Yeah.
It basically looks like a ski thing, like keep your ears warm, kind of reminds me of, and it goes around your head at the top. And it has little electrodes that go on your forehead underneath the band part. And so you just sleep in that.
Correct. And yeah, so think of a headband like, what people wear when they work out, or, in the 1970s maybe. And
Olivia Newton-John right?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, think about it in this way. What we're really trying to do is your prefrontal cortex, that area of the brain back here, is active and running every second that you're awake. So all we're doing with the electrical stimulation is actually just lowering the threshold for those neurons to fire, which they know how to do, and which is what they're doing every second you're awake, but just to fire during REM, so that you're in essence, we're just sort of giving a little bit of a kickstart or a jump start to turn on the prefrontal cortex, to take something that was off and turn it on. And once we give you access to that awareness and reasoning, then you get to take control. So you get to say,
how do you control it though? I mean, can you get, you try to think of something good, and then what if you accidentally think of the snakes chasing you or something? And are you stuck with snakes chasing you? I mean, how do you control it, I guess?
Sure. So, I mean, the cool thing is, like anything else, in life, the more you work at it, the better you get at it. So I'll use me as an example. So about, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, when I started, I've had these lucid dreams my whole life, but in the last 2 years that I've been having lucid dreams while being the CEO of Aladdin, I've thought, when I have them now, it's almost like work, in the sense that I think about it in the context of my job. So I mentioned to you, I fly. Well, so what I found was that I'm getting better. I'm becoming a better flyer. So in my first lucid dream 2 years ago, where I started to fly, it was like a cartoon. I got about 5 feet above the ground, and then, splat. And then the next dream, I got like 20 or 30 feet. And then the next dream, and I was getting further and further and flying up into the clouds, but I was becoming a better flyer. And one of the things that we want to do is empower people with the tools and tricks to get better at asserting control and doing some of those things. So I want to apply, there's obviously going to be an app that, corresponds to the headband. And we want to be able to have some cool, like, mindfulness applications and, videos and things that you would watch before you go to bed, to help give you ways to help have control, and to do the things that you want to do. And there's some cool tricks and ways to do it. I mean, it all boils down to, at the end of the day, that awareness that if everything that I see is a creation of my own mind, I can create anything I want, and I can do whatever I want to do. And there are easier and harder ways to do that. And there have thankfully been decades of research on lucid dreaming. And so a lot of those tools and tricks are out there. And so we would want to distill all of that for you and make it bite-sized and easy. And so there's cool stuff. Even little tricks like, sometimes people may have had this experience, maybe you've had it, Diane, of where you're not sure if it's a dream or not. You're kind of, this is weird. Is this a dream? And so there's a trick for knowing how to tell. And so you can't pinch yourself, because if you pinch yourself in a dream, you'd feel the pinch. So
good to know.
Yeah. So here's the trick.
Okay.
It's really kind of cool. So all you do is look around your surroundings and find anything that has writing on it. So whether it's, your watch, or, the picture on the wall behind you, or whatever it is, or the exit sign above a door, and wherever it is, find anything that has writing on it, look at it, read it, look away for a second, and then look back. And in real life, when you look back, it still says exit if it's the sign that you just said. But in your dream, it doesn't say the same thing the second time you look at it.
Why?
The letters and words get jumbled.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm not entirely sure why, if it's because, in the real world, it says the same thing when you look back because it's written there. Mm-hmm. But in your dream, it wasn't written there. It was just in your mind there, not written. And so when you go back, it doesn't put it back there in quite the same way. And so, so what you do is if you know that test, and I've done this now several times where I've been in a dream and I'm like, is this a dream? And then I remember the test and I look away and I look back and the letters are jumbled and I go, okay, it's a dream. I know for sure now.
I would think it would wake you up though. Once you realize you're in a dream, does it ever wake you up?
So yes, that's happened too. And there's a trick for that one also. So world's leading expert in lucid dreaming. This guy got a PhD from Stanford, did decades of research at the Stanford Sleep Labs, wrote, a bunch of very popular books. And I got to meet him and he invited me to his lucid dreaming retreat on the big island of Hawaii, which I went to. Yeah, it was really interesting. And so one of the tricks that I learned from him is a lot of people that happens, they become aware that they're dreaming and they get so excited that they wake up. Yeah. So he did all these experiments with different tools and tricks. And what he found was the single most potent way to stay in a dream. You're going to laugh because it's not something you would ever think is intuitive, is if you spin, literally spin on a top. And in the dream. If you spin in the dream, there's something about your vestibular or the centrifugal force or whatever that basically your mind starts getting occupied with the sensation of spinning, which keeps you in the moment as opposed to you getting out of the moment. And so he literally...
You have that much control though, within a dream. You're talking about, well, make myself do this or look at that and spin around. Not everybody has that control, but are you saying you get that if you're wearing this band that will have more control?
Yeah. So again, it comes back to this idea of awareness. So once you have the awareness that it's a dream, by definition, you were the creator of that environment. And so then, some of this comes from, you know who you are and you know that, you're an Aladdin user and you've had the app, that you can have control, other people have control. And so then it just becomes an issue of will of, making the decision that you're going to take control. And so, I think being aware that it's a dream without control is still beneficial, certainly to the 5% of the population that have chronic nightmares. So just knowing that it's not real would be, anxiety reducing, or the people with PTSD. But the real fun for me is control. And so, and one of the things from that study in Nature was they actually found some of the frequencies of stimulation were more correlated with control. Others were more correlated with what's called insight, to just be aware that you're dreaming. So for me, control is the holy grail. That's what I think is the most compelling.
And that's where you think you're going to get most people interested in
Totally.
Definitely. And there's lots of applications I could imagine that we're all thinking for this. And it'll be interesting to see your marketing tactics. But I'm curious now, when is this on the market and how much is it going to cost? And do you even know any of that yet?
Sure. I think, I'm in the sort of funding stage right now. So I would say the time it takes for me to get to market is going to be a little bit contingent upon the success I have on the fundraising side. But from the time that I'm fully funded, I think, I'm probably looking at about 12 months to get the first generation product to the market, where we're doing the highly accurate, sleep tracking and being able to, help really improve the quality of your sleep and the quality of your life. When you get more sleep, you burn 10% more calories, you perform better, you eat better. There's all these positive implications. The second product I would say is probably 12 to 18 months after that. And so, so we're a couple of years away from what I think the proper commercial product. But it's something that, I'm working feverishly to shorten as much as possible.
And you're doing all this in Arizona, right? You're here.
Yes, I'm here in Arizona. I'm I'm an almost native since my parents came here when I was 6 months old. So I'm a proud Arizonan.
I'm a native. You don't meet too many natives around.
You really don't.
Oh, especially my age.
True. Look, I think to me, I love it here. I think it's a really neat place. I like that there's an independent streak here and a little bit of self-sufficiency, almost libertarian in a sense of, let me get it done. It's the 5th largest city in the country. It doesn't act like it always, but
yeah.
But I'm also excited about where things are going. I think we have a real visionary president at Arizona State University. Creating the largest university in the country. I think our governor is a former entrepreneur and is business friendly, and so we've got really. I think we're moving in a really nice direction for startups.
I was wondering. We went to that tech conference where Wozniak, introduced his tech kind of school that he's creating, and I was curious what you were doing there. If you were introducing the technology to people during the room. I mean, how did you get involved in that? I'm just curious.
Oh, I got invited by a really spectacular woman in town named Mara Pernick. And Mara used to be at GPEC and I think it's the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And she's really involved in helping to improve the startup scene in Arizona.
Oh,
and which is...
I need to meet her.
You definitely do. I'm happy to make your introduction.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so she invited me and I'd met her back during the NJOY days.
So you're continuing with this in Arizona. You're not looking to move. How about manufacturing and all that? Everything.
I mean, the manufacturing will likely be in China. That's where we did our manufacturing for NJOY. But yeah, the rest. I still have some people here that I have relationships with from the NJOY days. And look, we were able to build a successful company here, and I like that we were able to do that. It was a source of pride for me, and I'd like to be able to do it again.
Well, it's awesome. And I'm sure a lot of people want to know how they're going to get these. So how can they find out and keep up with what you're doing?
We've got our website, just aladdindreamer.com. So ALADDIN, dreamer.com. And then, people can obviously email me. It's Craig@aladdindreamer.com. And, I'm happy to dialogue with people, and we're certainly excited about what we're doing.
Well, I'm excited. I think it'll be so fascinating. I mean, I was so thrilled when we met. It was really fun to talk to you that night. And thank you for being on the show. I really enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Diane.
Oh, you're welcome. Very interesting stuff.
All right. Take care. Thanks again.